The notification came through just as my manager finished her presentation. I kept my face neutral, but my heart was racing. The message read, "Final offer, director position for $125,000 base, 12% equity. Decision needed by end of day." I had to stop myself from laughing out loud. Not from joy, from the sheer irony of it all. Sandra had just spent 30 minutes tearing apart 18 months of my work in front of the entire department, calling it unnecessary fluff. Meanwhile, 3 of our biggest accounts had quietly been building something behind the scenes, and they wanted me to lead it. But here's the thing, this wasn't luck. This was the inevitable result of doing work that actually mattered while everyone else was just checking boxes. Before we dive into how I got here, drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had a boss who didn't appreciate your work until it was too late? Because what happened next changed everything. This story starts 20 months ago. I was 27, living in Charlotte, and convinced I could make a difference even in the most thankless job imaginable. The position was called Account Relations Specialist at Brightwell Supply Chain. When I walked in on day one, the office had that corporate desperation smell, burnt coffee, recycled air, and quiet panic. Sandra, my new manager, greeted me with all the warmth of a parking ticket. "Your predecessor lasted 6 weeks," she said, handing me a security badge. "The role is basically damage control. Don't get attached to it." She walked me past rows of cubicles where people looked like they'd given up years ago. My workspace was a corner desk that had clearly been forgotten during the last furniture purge. "Here's the deal," Sandra continued. "This company runs on efficiency metrics. Response times, ticket closures, processing speed. Everything else is noise." "Got it." I nodded, but I absolutely did not get it. Or rather, I disagreed completely. I just wasn't stupid enough to say so on my first day. The first 2 weeks were a nightmare. No proper onboarding, no documentation, barely any access to systems I needed. I spent most of my time digging through old email chains and abandoned databases, trying to piece together what this job actually entailed. That's when I found the gold mine. Hundreds of customer messages that had been answered with the corporate equivalent of whatever or not answered at all. These weren't random complaints. These were people trying to build relationships with a company that clearly didn't care. So I decided to try something radical. I treated them like human beings. When Rebecca from Hartwell Manufacturing mentioned her daughter was starting college, I made a note. 3 weeks later, during our next call, I asked how the first semester was going. She actually went silent for a second, like she was checking if she'd called the right number. "You remember that?" she asked. I kept doing it. Company milestones, personal updates, challenges they mentioned in passing. One executive told me about renovating his lake house. A month later, I asked how the dock project turned out. He told me in 15 years of working with vendors, no one had ever remembered a personal detail like that. I wasn't doing anything elaborate, just paying attention and following through. I tracked everything in a simple spreadsheet: names, dates, topics, concerns. If someone mentioned their father was in the hospital, I made sure to ask about his recovery the next time we spoke, not about their purchase order. This should be basic customer service. But at Brightwell, it was revolutionary. Sandra noticed I was spending more time on calls and started hovering. "This isn't therapy," she said during one of her drive-bys. "Keep it efficient." I nodded and immediately went back to asking people about their weekend plans. She thought I was wasting time. The data told a completely different story. Within 4 months, something shifted. Accounts that typically canceled after a few orders were renewing. Our retention numbers started climbing. Response times actually improved because customers wanted to engage with us. And once they trusted me, they started sharing the real problems, the issues they've been quietly dealing with, planning to mention in their exit survey. Late deliveries, billing discrepancies, communication breakdowns. Things they'd stopped complaining about because they assumed nobody cared. One evening, I was on a call with a client in Oregon who was about to pull a 6-figure account. We talked for over an hour about what had gone wrong. I didn't make promises I couldn't keep. I just acknowledged every issue, documented everything, and told him I'd personally oversee the fixes. He didn't cancel. That's when I knew this approach wasn't just nice, it was necessary. They just couldn't see it yet. By month 6, former skeptics were calling my direct line, bypassing our main support system entirely. I wasn't in sales, but somehow accounts were growing. Sandra still thought I was wasting everyone's time with my feelings-based approach. The shift became impossible to ignore by month 7. Rebecca from Hartwell called me about a shipping error, then mentioned her company's 10th anniversary gala. I noted the date. 2 weeks before the event, I sent a brief congratulations message. She called me back within an hour. "How did you remember this?" she asked. "Our account team at our bank didn't even acknowledge it." After that, she routed everything through me. Not through tickets, not through the general line, directly to me. This pattern repeated with client after client. I built a tracking system. Nothing fancy, just organized, actionable notes. Anniversaries got flagged. Family situations got followed up on. I actually cared, and that made all the difference. Sandra saw my 30-minute calls and started lurking again. "We're not running a counseling service," she announced one morning. "I didn't realize building relationships violated company policy," I replied, not looking up from my screen. She didn't appreciate that. What she really didn't appreciate was what I'd been tracking privately. Retention rates, upsell conversions, contract renewals, and their direct connection to relationship touchpoints. Rebecca renewed at 8% higher terms. Another client tripled their order volume. Over 4 quarters, our account cancellation rate dropped by 38%. I didn't broadcast these wins. I just kept building the evidence, connecting real revenue to the soft skills everyone dismissed. Sandra called a department meeting to remind everyone that relationship building is not a measurable deliverable. I stared at my monitor while she lectured about operational excellence. Behind me, someone whispered, "Tell that to the Hartwell account." I said nothing, but I was compiling something she couldn't ignore. By year-end, I had irrefutable data. $237,000 in net new revenue directly attributable to relationship management. Not estimates, actual figures with client names, interaction dates, and dollar amounts. I printed the entire analysis, had it bound, and left it on Sandra's desk with a note. "Quarterly review you didn't request. Thought you want to see the numbers." She never thanked me, never acknowledged it, but I watched from across the floor as she flipped through every page, her expression never changing. 2 days later, she scheduled a meeting. I expected criticism. Instead, she asked one question: "How are you getting these renewal rates?" I looked directly at her and said, "I make them feel like their business matters." She didn't write anything down, didn't respond, just ended the meeting 5 minutes early. That's when I realized she'd never understand. These clients weren't loyal to Brightwell Supply Chain. They were loyal to the one person who treated them like partners, not transactions. One night around this time, I stayed late finishing follow-ups. The office was empty, snow falling outside. I was wrapping up a call with David from Print Edge. His vendor had damaged a critical shipment, and he was furious. I talked him down, committed to covering the replacement costs, then asked if his son ended up getting that scholarship he'd been hoping for. He exhaled like I just lifted a weight off his shoulders. "Full ride, starting in January. Thank you for remembering." "Congratulations. That's incredible news." After we hung up, I sat in that empty office, half the lights off, Sandra's closed door visible down the hall. I thought about my first day when she told me this role was basically temporary damage control. That night, I knew I'd built something valuable. Quietly, on my own terms. And I was just getting started. The annual review meeting happened the next week. Full company call. CEO, department heads, everyone. Sandra sat rigid in her chair, stone-faced throughout the morning. Then Marcus Wellington, our CEO, pulled up the retention dashboard. "I want to specifically highlight our account relations team," he said. "Retention is up 22%. Cancellations are at a 5-year low. This is exactly the kind of client stability we need." People turned toward our row. Some applauded. Sandra's jaw clenched so hard I thought her teeth might crack. After the meeting, I was heading to grab coffee when I felt her presence behind me. Whatever game you're playing, she said, voice low and sharp, it ends the day. I turn around. I'm not sure what you mean. You're not special. You're just louder. Let's see what you've actually accomplished. She handed me a folder labeled Complete Account Analysis, full documentation required. She wanted every interaction I'd had with every client for the past 18 months. Names, dates, call duration, discussion topics, business impact, revenue attribution, renewal outcomes, everything. Due in 10 days, she added, walking away. It was clearly punishment. Busy work designed to bury me in paperwork until I stopped standing out. But I didn't hesitate. I cleared my calendar and went to work. I pulled every email, every call log, every note I documented, built a comprehensive tracker from the ground up, 47 pages of data, immaculately organized and time-stamped. I didn't just show what I'd done, I mapped it, client by client, conversation by conversation, showed how a 15-minute discussion about a vendor issue led to a contract extension, how remembering someone's daughter's graduation helped us save a stalled partnership, how every inefficient moment translated into money. When I delivered the report, she barely glanced at it. This is what you wanted, I said, complete documentation. I walked out thinking maybe, finally, she'd understand what I built. Instead, 5 days later, I got a calendar invite, mandatory team meeting communication standards review. No other details, just a time, a room, and Sandra's name. That's when I knew. She wasn't planning to learn. She was planning to destroy. The day of the meeting, I walked in and saw my report already loaded on the screen. My stomach dropped. She'd pulled up my documentation, my year and a half of work, and displayed it like evidence in a trial. Everyone filed in silently, unsure what was coming. Sandra stood at the front like a prosecutor. We're going to address some critical inefficiencies, she began, clicking to the first slide. I watched her cherry-pick lines completely out of context. Birthday reminders, notes about family vacations, a comment about someone's daughter making the debate team. This, she said, using a laser pointer, is not supply chain management. This is emotional distraction. We're not here to be pen pals. We're here to solve logistical problems and drive operational efficiency. I sat there, fists clenched under the table, jaw locked. She continued, page after page, stripping every ounce of value from my work, making me look like some desperate people-pleaser chasing validation instead of results. The team? Silent. No one looked at me. No one challenged her. Then she reached the final page, my master document showing every dollar of revenue tied to every relationship touchpoint. This kind of emotional micromanagement, she said, is inefficient and unsustainable. And without hesitation, she deleted it, right there on the screen. Gone. The room went silent. She smiled, turned back to us, and said, effective immediately, we're returning to professional communication standards. Scripted responses, timed interactions, measurable outputs. Any questions? She thought she'd eliminated a problem. She had no idea she'd just destroyed the only foundation keeping the company from collapsing. I stood up, slowly, looked around the room at everyone who'd watched her demolish me, and said nothing. Then I unplugged my laptop, grabbed my notebook, and walked toward the door. Where you going? Sandra asked. I'm done, I said, effective immediately. Her face went blank. You're making a terrible career mistake. No, I said. The terrible mistake was thinking any of this mattered to you. I walked out, didn't slam the door, didn't look back. But everyone heard it. Final. Real. Over. My phone had already been buzzing during that meeting. The message I glanced at earlier was from Meridian Solutions, 3 former clients who'd left Brightwell 6 months earlier and started their own firm. They'd been watching everything. They knew exactly what I'd built, and they wanted me to build their entire client division from scratch. My way. No Sandra. No scripts. No micromanagement. Within 2 weeks of starting at Meridian, 4 of my former accounts called me directly. They didn't need a sales pitch. They just want to keep working with someone who actually valued them. Sandra tried to save those relationships. I heard she started calling clients personally, attempting to rebuild bridges. But the emails that got forwarded to me told the whole story. Hope you're doing well. I'd love to hear how your family is doing. Generic, desperate, scripted. One client told me she asked about his son's baseball season. He had 3 daughters, no sons, and none of them played baseball. Within 3 months, Brightwell lost over half their major accounts. 6 months later, Sandra was gone. No announcement, no farewell, just gone. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. By then, I was a partner at Meridian, running the fastest growing client division in our sector. Here's what I learned. Some people will never value your work until they try to replace you and fail. Sandra tried. The whole company tried. And they failed because you can't automate genuine connection. Today, if you ask me what the secret is, I'll tell you the same thing I told Sandra in that meeting. Make people feel like they matter. That's not fluff. That's the foundation of everything. Thanks for listening to my story. If this resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment about a time when someone underestimated your value. And remember, the best revenge isn't fighting back. It's succeeding so loudly they can't ignore you. I'll see you in the next one.